Alright, we are live, ladies and germs, and boy, NASCAR really stepped in it big this time for all the dumb shit that they did this week. And there is a lot to talk about. That and an Atlanta race that was actually pretty decent for once. Lots of shit to talk about, so let's get into it. This is The Fuel. What's happening, ladies and germs? This is the Packer Man. Welcome to tonight's edition of The Fuel, where we're going to be talking about the 2021 Quaker State 400 from the Atlanta Motor Speedway, the final race before their repave and reprofile, which we're going to be getting into that here in a little bit. Excuse me, 1 second. Water. So, as I said, this edition of The Fuel will be covering the Quaker State 400 at Atlanta, presented by Walmart, Wally World, and this is our 101st episode ever. Title of this episode: NASCAR stepped in dog shit. They did not make themselves look very good at all this weekend. Between the disaster of a particular race on Friday night, to all the headlines and speculation about the new car, to them just basically not telling drivers about certain things, or basically passing the buck in certain instances. PR-wise, it has not been a good week for NASCAR whatsoever. And we're going to be getting into all that because we have got lots to talk about, as I need to... Oh, actually, I don't need to change that. Or that. Huh. I think that's something. I need to change that. I need to check something. I need to change that real quick. Alright, there we go. Alright, so the race itself was actually not that bad. Especially when you consider the one back in April. One back in April was absolute trash. But this one was actually pretty decent, all things considered. Despite how hard it was to pass at times. But let's go ahead and get into the race headlines. Kurt Busch outdueled his brother Kyle, and it was a duel pretty much between the two of them. Pretty much all race long. I mean, combined, they had 235 of the race's 260 laps. So, and they each took one stage apiece. So it was a pretty fantastic duel between Kurt Busch and Kyle Busch for the Atlanta win. Although Kurt definitely won under some dubious circumstances, which I'm going to be getting to in a little bit. But let's go ahead and get into some of the headlines from this week that has had some people up in arms. First off, starting off, the Knoxville truck race on Friday was an absolute disaster of epic proportions. And it really all started in the heat races. In one of the heat races, the flagman waved the white flag early. He waved it on lap 9 instead of lap 14, so that caused some confusion. And it's like, well, this has gone off to a good start, huh? And then, midway through the race, there was a absolute officiating snafu. One of the worst I've seen this year, where Ben Rhodes made some contact with another truck. I can't remember who it was right off the bat. It might have been Brett Moffitt. It was somebody. And it cut their left rear tire down. And it did some damage to the front of Ben Rhodes' car. It basically tore some tubing out of the front of his car. So he basically had like a spike, I guess you could say, or a horn sticking out of the front of the truck. NASCAR, in their infinite wisdom, decided to wait until the green flag flew to say, hey, you gotta bring your truck in and get that fixed. And it's like, why would you wait until the green flag is thrown to bring them in, to black flag them for that? Like, that makes no fucking sense whatsoever. And in fact, Ben Rose's, I think it was his park team owner or something like that, and crew chief was getting into a bit of a verbal, a heated argument with the officials stationed in their camp, and some of the officials were getting a little physical with them, which is fucking bullshit. I mean, officials should, you don't put hands on officials, but by that same token, officials shouldn't be putting hands on other people either. Unless they're trying to separate, a fight. But in this case, it wasn't a fight. They were in the argument themselves. So that was fucking bullshit. And Ben Rhodes' crew chief even alluded as such, because he even said it was bullshit on live TV. And I didn't blame him. It was bullshit. Like, how do you have a snafu like that? It's just absolutely fucking stupid. But then again, this is just par for the course for NASCAR officialdom. NASCAR officiating is not worth a fuck. I have said that for years. They are so inconsistent in their calls, and some of their calls absolutely fucking dumb, that it's enough to make your head explode. And this is just another case of that you can just throw right on the pile. Fun wasn't done yet, though, because the end of this race was a fucking train wreck. Like, there was caution after caution, wreck after wreck after wreck. Of course, when you're on a dirt track that only has one groove, that tends to happen. Because people, and there were even some people that were saying that, yeah, drivers were not showing each other any respect out there. And they really weren't. They were just basically trying to, shove each other out of the way. It looked like a fucking WRECKFEST session, for God's sake. And then it went to overtime. They had to do 4 goddamn GWCs, green, white checkers, to get this one done. On one occasion, there was a massive pileup right at the start-finish line. And at this point, I'm just like, oh, God. This is just not a good look for NASCAR. You know, I mean, Eldora, I mean, they've had some snoozers, but I would have taken an Eldora snoozer over what the fuck this was. I was happy when the fucking race was over with, because it's like, Jesus Christ. I mean, they went 29 laps over their scheduled distance. It was only supposed to be a 150 lap race. And they went 29 laps over the scheduled distance because of all the fucking shenanigans that went on in this last OT and all the OTs they had at the end of that race. Absolutely ridiculous, and it makes NASCAR look like a fucking joke. Well, it's one of the things that makes NASCAR look like a fucking joke, because they were certainly doing that themselves earlier this week as well. Because with the next headline, Scott Miller is a douchebag. I have long said this, but he had a tweet. Let me see if I can find it here. I'm pretty sure No, it was actually a tweet quoting him. Let me find it real quick, because I'm pretty sure I favorited it. Yep, here we go. So, display capture. Go full screen. Alright, so look at this quote. This is from Scott Miller on qualifying at Road America last week. They had 25, and of course this is also in regards to Chase Elliott not being able to get a lap in. Scott Miller basically said that they had 25 minutes to get in clean lap, and if they want to wait until the last minute and something happens, that's pretty much on them, not us. He says for those who didn't, it is a reflection on them and not the format. So basically, he's passing the buck here, saying that, oh, it's the driver's fault, you know, if they can't get a lap in. Except that Chase was trying to get a lap in. I mean, he was out there, you know, 10 minutes into the session and was trying to get a fucking lap in, but because of all the shenanigans that were happening in qualifying, he couldn't get a lap in. Of course, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because he ended up winning the race anyways, but still, Scott Miller needs to fucking go. I mean, this guy, not only is he absolutely incompetent at his job, but he's just a fucking dickhead on top of that. Like, I cannot fucking stand Scott Miller. This guy is a total fuckhead, and I have been long saying that for many years now. This guy needs to be fucking replaced. I mean, this guy is just not, he just doesn't have the wherewithal, and quite frankly, he shouldn't be the vice president of competition. I mean, he's just a fucking dumbass, as far as I'm concerned. Not to mention a fucking dickhead. I can't stand Scott Miller. His ass needs to go pronto. That's all I got to say about that. Next up, there were some concerns about the safety of the next-gen car. Because there were some people like Steve Meal that were saying that they were kind of concerned about the direction that the next-gen car was going, as my cat is climbing up on the damn air conditioner. So I think she's in heat again. Fucking cat. But there were some concerns about the potential safety issues of the new car. So there was apparently a crash test at Talladega last week. And let me reactivate display capture so you can see this. This was a note that was sent to drivers, and it was actually confirmed by the recipients of it, about a crash test at Talladega. They had robotic controls on the car to crash it. Once they get the report back, chassis distribution will begin. Some of the chatter about the test likely from chassis distribution delay. cats. Quit wrestling. So, it says, update on NG testing. Test was completed at Talladega on June the 30th, which was a couple weeks ago, using a current spec NG vehicle fitted with a crash dummy and driven by a robot. The processing of all that data is well underway. This includes the correlation and rerunning of models. The team is also identifying additional cases for crash comparisons. Preliminary review of the dummy data from the test indicates good and comparable performance when compared to other right frontal dummy data, non-NG. There is still a lot more analysis to be completed, and that has started. Worth noting that through all testing, sled and full vehicle, the dummy itself has functioned nominally. All of this data is being packaged up and will be sent to an independent panel made up of experts in the biomechanics safety field, Dr. Radden, Dr. Crandall, Dr. Myers, and Dr. Stitzel, for their review. We expect this to take roughly 1 week. When all of this is complete, we will set up another review with you guys. If you would like to discuss further, I'm here at the track and I've been out and about. Best of luck today in the race. So evidently there's been some testing going on. There were some concerns that the car was not flexing enough under crashing when it crashes. Basically, there were some concerns about it not having enough crush zones to dissipate energy. And the concern with that is a lot of that energy would be transferred back to the driver, which could potentially have severe, if not fatal, consequences. I think it's best to just wait and see how this plays out, because there was a lot of people that were kind of up in arms about it and like, you know, they're putting the drivers at risk and all this other stuff. I mean, it's pretty obvious that they're doing tests on it. So, and evidently they did a test a couple weeks ago, and they're basically analyzing the data and all that good stuff. So they want to. I'm thinking that NASCAR wants to make sure all their ducks in a row before they start mass producing these chassis for all these new teams. Because let's not forget, after this season, all the cars that the teams are using this year are completely obsolete. Next year they're going to the new car, which is completely new bodies. Also, the wheels are different. Only 1 lug nut now instead of the usual 5. So hopefully that will cut down on the dumbass lug nut penalties. Hopefully it gets rid of that completely. But there was some concerns about the safety of the next gen car. But I'm going to say let's wait and see what happens. So I'm pretty sure they're still doing some testing and all that good stuff. Next up, this was one of the big things. This is actually the big story of the week. Atlanta Motor Speedway set to be reconfigured. And this was the thing, this was the big thing that had drivers and fans very vocal this weekend. And here's why. So let's reactivate the display capture and go back to Twitter. This is what the next generation reprofile is for Atlanta Motor Speedway. Now, as you see in the thumbnail, which someone actually posted a picture of that on Twitter, and I thought that was funny. So I was like, I'll take that and make it my thumbnail. It perfectly encapsulates the problem that Atlanta Motor Speedway had. The surface was just too damn old, and it was coming up in places, especially on the front stretch, and it actually had some spots where it came up during the race, which we will be talking about that in the race review. But we've all been saying the track needs to be repaved, and how many times have I said that over the past couple years when I've done reviews for Atlanta? The Quick Trip 500 or the Folds of Honor Quick Trip 500 or whatever the fuck it's called. How many times have I said that the track needs to be repaved? Well, they're finally going to do it. But there's a small problem. And that's what you see in front of you. New for 2022, next generation reprofile. So they are repaving the track, as we all know. Apparently they're also going to put in some drainage pipes to help drain the water out, which makes sense. But here's some of the things that really did not make drivers very happy, especially considering that they weren't told about this sort of thing, which is a bit of a problem. We'll get to that in a minute. Here's what the reprofile looks like. The apron will remain at 2 degrees. Now, the old transition apron was 4 degrees. However, the new transition apron will be 18 degrees. That's not the big concern, though. The big concern is the fact that it's going to go from 24 degrees of banking, which is, I think, what it's had for since it was first created all the way back in the 60s. But now it's going to have 28 degrees of banking. Not only that, but the track width is going to be different all the way around. You see, the old track width, how wide the track was, all the way around was 55 feet. But now, each of the different aspects of the track, front stretch, back stretch, and turns, they're going to be different widths. The front stretch will be shortened to 52 feet, which isn't all that much. But the back stretch is going to be shortened to 42 feet. And the turns are going to be shortened to 40 feet. So basically what they're trying to do is they're trying to make Atlanta Motor Speedway into kind of a miniature version of Daytona. So basically they're trying to get 2 more of them super speedway type races for next year. And this has had a lot of fans and a lot of drivers especially up in arms. Here's a quote from Kevin Harvick. Now, as all of you know, I am not a fan of Kevin Harvick in the slightest. And I've made that very well known over the past couple of years that I am just not a fan of Kevin Harvick whatsoever. So you know it's serious when I actually agree with him on what he says here. And it kind of highlights, you know, just how big of a deal this is and how much of a concern I think a lot of us have for the sport going forward. Okay, here's what he said about the Atlanta Motor Speedway reprofiling. I don't think it's very good. The proper thing to do would probably be to build a short track, which is what the California Speedway is doing. The cheapest thing to do is just leave the walls where they are and hope for the best. I don't think that worked well for Texas, which it didn't. I don't think that worked out well for Bristol, which it didn't. I don't think that worked out well for Kentucky, which it didn't. Texas only has 1 date now, 1 points date. It does have the All-Star race, but that's a completely different deal. And Kentucky, they did that as well, and it just made the racing even worse. And it wasn't that good to begin with. I don't think any of those were very good. If you just keep winging it, don't get the driver's input, you're going to just get the same conclusion. You would think that you would want the driver's input. A lot of times, I think the thought process is, we need to make the drivers uncomfortable. And instead, you wind up with a media press conference that winds up all about your track repave you didn't ask any of the drivers about. It is what it is. I'm of the opinion that they, SMI, Speedway Motorsports Incorporated, don't care. They just do what they want. This isn't the first time that we've had the repave talk and uproar over the pavement, but this is the first time that everybody's had the plan pitched on them 3 days before the race and said, iRacing designed this. I've been in some really, really horrific iRacing events where the tracks drive nothing like the cars, and it's not anything personal against iRacing. You wouldn't design an airplane and go fly it with passengers in it before you tested it. The input that comes with the knowledge of things that come with the drivers and the way the cars are, and the things that happen are important. You can't have a bunch of suits designing a racetrack. And you know what? He is absolutely 100% correct. One thing that NASCAR needs to realize is that the driver's input is just as important, if not even more so, than the fans or even their own. Because it's these drivers that are putting their asses on the line week in and week out for our entertainment. Okay? Yes, there have been a lot of things put into place that have made the sport safer. The safer barriers, the head and neck restraint, you know, all that good stuff. But this is still a dangerous sport. It will never be completely safe. Doesn't matter what type of sport it is. I mean, I remember last year, Formula One at Bahrain. I can't remember if it was the Bahrain Grand Prix or a Secure Grand Prix. Whatever the case may be. I mean, F1 has certainly come a long way in terms of safety in and of themselves. But I remember that race where Romain Grosjean spun out and hit the Armco barrier that was right there at such an angle that I look back on it now and it's just like, how the hell did he survive that? Because the car basically it got wedged into the Armco barrier. It basically pushed up the Armco barrier, basically split in half, and it basically shoved itself right in there. The car split in half basically. The back end of it basically split off from the rest of the car. And the car also caught on fire, which is also extremely unusual, considering the fuel cells that they have in there. I mean, that just shows you how devastating of an impact that was. But a lot of people said the halo was actually what saved Romain Grosjean's life, because without it, who knows what would have happened. He might have been trapped in there and he might have burned to death. Now, he did suffer some burns on his hands, but I think on his face as well. But all things considered, when you look at that wreck and how that transpired and what was left of that car, it is a miracle he made it out of that wreck alive. So it does not matter one iota how safe motorsports has become in today's age. It is still one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. These guys are still going damn near close to 200 miles an hour, which is blindingly fast. I mean, yeah, these stock cars, I mean, they don't really get up to that fast as much anymore with the restrictor plates and the tapered spacer and all that other shit. But these guys are still, you know, going 170, 180, which is still extremely fast. I mean, something goes wrong at that speed and it's like, you're fucked. You know, and a lot of drivers were very vocal about the Atlanta repave. Denny Hamlin made his feelings known. Kyle Busch made his feelings known. He wasn't happy about it. Of course, Kevin Harvick. Joey Logano, I think, was the most telling out of all of them, because when he was asked about the Atlanta reprofile, I mean, he almost didn't want to talk about it. Like, he seemed legitimately nervous about it. I mean, what the fuck does that tell you? So, I mean, NASCAR and, you know, SMI, you know, these executives, they need to get their fucking heads out of their ass. Okay, they need to start taking the driver's input more, because they're the nut that's holding the steering wheel. They're the most important part of that race car. They know how it feels, how it's supposed to drive, you know, all that, you know, all those nuts and berries. And not taking any of their input is just fucking foolish. You know, just as Kevin Harvick said, just trying to wing it. It's just not going to work. I mean, look at all the tracks that he listed off. It didn't work for them. I mean, Bristol basically had to go through another banking reprofile, and they fixed some of the damage that they caused. But, I mean, look at what happened with Texas. They made the lackluster racing there even more so. Look at Kentucky. You know, they tried to narrow the racetrack, and they made the lackluster racing there even more so. And they're no longer on the schedule. Driver's input is important, people. They're the ones that are putting their asses on the line for our enjoyment. Don't you think it would be, I don't know, fair to listen to them every once in a while? Don't you think it would be a good idea? Just a thought. But yeah. Not a very good PR week for NASCAR, to say the least. And then we get to the Quaker State 400 at Atlanta, which was a solid race, all in all. But it basically had a similar instance to what we saw back in April. We'll be getting to that in a minute. But let's get into the race review itself. Get this over with, because I'm going to have a busy week this week. I'm going to be working a lot of overtime, so I want to get this done and over with. So, Quaker State 400 at Atlanta. It's been a while since we had a 400-mile race at Atlanta Motor Speedway. So, the stages broke down like this. The 260-lap race, stages 1 and 2 were 80 laps, with stage 3 being 100 laps. There was a chance that rain was going to be a factor in this race, and it looked like it for a while, because there was some drops during the race, but it actually ended up not being a factor whatsoever for a change. The only driver that had to go to the rear of the field was Martin Truex Jr. for 2 tech failures in pre-race tech. He did pass post-race inspection, so at least they got that fixed. So stage 1, 80 laps. Chase Elliott started from the pole, got a great start. I guess the other drivers were kind of sleeping on the start of the race, and I guess that was that's the conclusion that NASCAR came to, because Chase was not penalized for it. So Elliott leads lap 1. Denny Hamlin up to 3rd on lap number 3. Kyle Larson tried to do a 3-piece on Logano, Matty D, and Reddick. Didn't really work out. It was a nice attempt, though. Martin Truex Jr. starts coming towards the front in a hurry. Kyle Busch challenges Elliott for the lead on the high side and takes it for a first pure lead change in lap 14. Kyle Busch really seems to have regained his mojo this year after such a downer year last year, where he was just kind of nowhere for a lot of races, and it wasn't until Texas at the end of the year that he finally got that win he was looking for. When you look at from last year to this year, I mean, it definitely seems like that 18 team has really regained its mojo, especially when you consider that they're 3rd in points right now. So Hamlin gets by Elliott for 2nd. Elliott does a crossover down the front stretch, so they battle back and forth a little bit, but Hamlin ends up taking the lead, or taking this position back. We have our first caution on lap 26, which was the competition caution. Everyone comes in for service because, of course you are. This track was so abrasive that it'll eat through tires in a heartbeat. I mean, the difference between 50-lap tires and new tires was like 2.5 seconds per lap. That's time you just can't afford to give up. But Hamlin wins the race off pit road, so he leads on the restart. Kyle Busch leads the first lap after the restart. But their battle is put on hold with the second caution on lap 32 with a multi-car crash down the backstretch. 4-wide doesn't work as Cody Ware gets loose. He gets into the 38 a little bit, but the 38 was able to keep it under control. The 47 of Ricky Stenhouse, he was trying to avoid getting into the guys on his inside, and ended up getting into Daniel Suarez, which sent the 47 and the 99 head-on into the inside wall. So Kyle Busch leads on the restart. I figured after this one, I was like, man, are we really going to get into a bit of a crash fest here? No. This was the final caution of the day. Yeah, this was the last caution of the day, and I'm not counting the competition or the stage-ending cautions. I don't count those. This was the final caution of the day. So basically, the rest of the race went clean and green. So Kyle Busch leads on the restart. Reddick up to 3rd, got a great restart. Kurt Busch by Hamlin for 2nd. So Kurt Busch was looking good early on. This was actually, I think, the first race in a while that Kurt Busch has really looked good. I mean, he dominated this race. The last couple times he's won, he kind of snookered it. But in this case, he was actually the dominator. He led the most laps in the race. Battle for third between Alex Bowman and Hamlin. Truex up into the top 10 after starting from the rear. We have a battle for seventh between Larson, Byron, and Kez. Newman has to pit for a fraying tire, so tire wear was not good on that 6 car. And Kyle Busch wins stage number 1. Pretty meh first stage. So everyone comes in for service, obviously, and Kurt Busch wins the race off pit road this time. So we get our second stage, 80 laps. Kurt Busch leads the start of stage 2. Reddick gets by Kyle Busch for second, but Kyle tries to fight back. At this point, teams may have been looking at the halfway point with weather in the area, which was a legitimate concern. Bowman and Kyle Busch battle for the third position. Bowman gets by Reddick for second. Kyle Busch gets by Reddick for third. And actually, before they came to the green on this one, Harvick and Truex had to pit for repairs after they made contact on pit road. Logano kicks off green flag pit stops on 107, not really of his own doing because he had a loose wheel. Kyle Busch gets by Bowman for second. Majority of the teams come in for service under green at around the halfway point of the stage, which was like lap 120, I think it was, right around there, 120, somewhere in that range. Kurt Busch pits from the lead on lap 122. Almirola and Priest stay out, hoping for the rain to come. Race reaches halfway, so if the rain did come, the race would be considered official, which is what Almirola and Priest were hoping for. We have our second pure lead change when Ryan Priest gets by Almirola on lap 131. The reason why this one counted is because both of these guys were on the same strategy. So they were basically on equal footing, which is why this one counted. But Kurt Busch got by both to re-inherit the race lead. The race lead, excuse me. But since he was on fresh tires at this point and made his pit stop, and the 10 and the 37 have not pitted, it does not count as a pure lead change because Kurt Busch has a clear-cut advantage. So Almirola finally comes in on lap 137, Priest not too long after. Larson gets by Reddick for the fourth position. We have a battle for 10th between Truex, Harvick, and Byron. Battle for 5th between Reddick and Hamlin near the end of the stage. And Kurt Busch wins stage number 2. Everyone comes in for service. And Kurt Busch wins the race off pit road. Hamlin gets nabbed for speeding. Ouch. That had to hurt. So then we get to stage number 3, 100 laps. Before this stage could begin, though, a huge chunk of pavement on the front stretch had come out. Of course, that's what you see in the thumbnail. And they basically had to bring out some asphalt, fresh asphalt, to basically cover it up. And it was during this red flag period, because they had to red flag the race to make the repairs. They had a segment that actually made me laugh. They had a segment where Kyle Busch was being asked questions by some little kids. And one of the questions was, who do you think wrecks the most? And Kyle Busch's response was, it's Wrecky Spinhouse. I'm just like, oh my god. Oh, I literally laughed my ass off. Because it's like, well, he's not wrong. I mean, he got the nickname Ricky Shithouse for a reason. You know, Wrecky Shithouse, Ricky Spinhouse, Wrecky Spinhouse. You know, it goes on and on. I mean, the guy seems like he's in, you know, a wreck every single week. I mean, he has his moments of brilliance. I mean, the Bristol Dirt Race was certainly one of them. He looked good at Nashville, but other than that, I mean, he just hasn't been very good in his Cup career. Other than his 2 wins in 2017. But I thought that was funny as hell. So, Kurt Busch leads the start of stage 3. We had 4 wide in turns 1 and 2, which is crazy. Kyle Busch gets by Bowman for second. We had 3 wide for 6th between Kez, Reddick, and Truex. Then things kind of settle down a little bit. Not much going on. Reddick gets by Truex for 5th, and then Kyle starts challenging his big bro Kurt for the race lead. So this is when the brother-on-brother battle really started kicking into high gear. Logano kicks off the final round of green flag stops on lap 211. Kurt Busch pits from the lead on lap 213. Kyle actually pitted one lap before, and that was enough to cycle him around with the race lead, because like I said, new tires are worth about 2.5 seconds, and that was pretty much the difference between the deficit that Kyle had and the lead that he had on the pit stops. And then Kyle Larson gets caught. Oh, careful, that's not a platform. One of the low ones tried to walk on my notes and fell through it. You okay? You alright, little one? Oh, Jesus Christ. But anyways, as I was saying, Kyle Larson got caught speeding on pit road. He was on his way to a top 5 finish. I mean, that's one way to keep him from winning. You know, a couple ways to keep him from winning. He got spun out last week while in the top 5, and here this week he kind of does it to himself with a speeding penalty. But he was in the top 5 otherwise, so don't let his poor finishes fool you. I mean, he was running top 5 both last week and this week, and it's just problems kind of put him behind the 8 ball. It doesn't really matter, though, because, I mean, he has 4 wins right now. I mean, he's in position to make a run at the championship, which we're only 5 races from the playoffs now. But Kurt tries to close back in on Kyle for the race lead. I was like, yep, the battle is between the Busch brothers because everybody else was too far back. Then came the moment that really kind of irritated me, because this was a moment that kind of reminded me of what happened back in April, when Joey Logano held up Kyle Larson and allowed Ryan Blaney to get by him and take the win. Very similar circumstance here. The difference here is Kurt Busch actually publicly on national television thanked Ross Chastain for this. So Kurt's trying to come back. Ross Chastain, who is about to go a lap down, basically gets in Kyle's way, gets him in his dirty air, and allows Kurt Busch to make a great run in turns 3 and 4, make up basically half a second in 2 corners, gets side by side with Kyle, and takes the lead for the rest of the race for a 3rd and final pure lead change on lap 236. I said it back in April, and I'm going to say it here. Team orders are a fucking abomination to motorsports. I don't care who the beneficiary is. I don't care who the victim is. I don't care what type of motorsport it is. Team orders are bullshit. It's not racing. It's manipulating race results, in my opinion. You know, there's some people that were online defending this like, well, you know, he was just being a good teammate. I really don't give a fuck if he was being a good teammate or not. Team orders are bullshit. It's not racing, people. The only reason why Kurt got by his brother because he had to have his teammate basically block him. And it was the same situation like back in April, because Chastain was trying to stay on the lead lap, but when, you know, Kurt tried to get by, he basically let him get the bottom and let him go on by. Don't like that one bit. Team orders fucking suck. I don't care what anybody says. They're an abomination to motorsports. Yes, it is allowed in NASCAR for some fucking reason, but I will never accept team orders. They're fucking bullshit. I mean, I like the fact that Kurt won, but I don't like the circumstances. But Kurt had a lot of lap cars in front of him with less than 20 to go. I mean, it was a lot of lap cars, including Kyle Larson, who had to serve that speeding penalty. But Kyle was still trying to chase Kurt for the lead, staying within a half a second. And then, I forget which lap it was, but Kyle tried to dive bomb Kurt into turn 1 and damn near cleared him off of 2 for the lead. but couldn't quite get there. And they were side by side for a little while longer, but at that point, I think Kyle burned his stuff up. There was more lap traffic in front of them with 4 laps to go, but Kurt was able to navigate it pretty easily, and he's able to hold off his brother Kyle to win the Quaker State 400 at Atlanta. And like I said during his victory interview, he said, "Yeah, we beat Kyle, and I want to thank Ross Chastain for doing his job." Like, no, fuck that noise. And Kyle was very frustrated with Chastain, for doing that as well, which I don't blame him. Team orders are bullshit. I don't care what anybody says. That's not racing to me. I know some people might not agree, but I really don't give a fuck. So, that's just how I feel about that. But that aside, let's go ahead and do the statistics, race results, points, my final rating, and we'll be done. So, let's do some race statistics. Overall lead changes, just 10. Just 10 overall lead changes. It's the same number we had last week at Road America. But this race had more laps. Just very difficult to pass here, man. 3 pure lead changes overall. Only 2 caution flags, though, which is good. I mean, the last one was all the way back on lap 32, so large majority of this race was clean and green. And green flag passes. There were 2,087 green flag passes in this race, which gives us an average of 8.7 per lap. There's only a few races that this race is in front of. The Atlanta race from April, the Bristol Dirt Race, Martinsville, Richmond, Dover especially, and the Coca-Cola 600. But that's about it. So, passing at a bit of a premium in this race, as per the usual. Certainly was like that in April, I'll tell you that much. So that brings the overall rating down a little bit, and the team order shit, I'm not a fan of that, so that's gonna affect the score a little bit. This was still a fine race for what it was, though. The brother versus brother battle was definitely the most what's the word I'm looking for here? Was definitely the most appealing portion of this race, because it's like, hey, this is actually pretty good. Brother versus brother. It's just, I mean, it's a story maker to say the least. It's like, can the older brother, outrun the younger brother for the race win? And he was able to do so. It's a very compelling story. But let's take a look at the race results and the point standings. First up, race results. Kurt Busch with the win led 144 of the race's 260 laps. Kyle Busch comes home in second. Martin Truex Jr., despite having to start at the rear of the field due to pre-race tech inspection failures, comes home in third. So, nice recovery. And honestly, they needed a good finish, because ever since their win at Darlington, they just not been that good. Alex Bowman comes home in the 4th position. Ryan Blaney in 5th. Very quiet 5th for Ryan Blaney. He wasn't really anywhere in this race, to be honest. Not really a contender. But, still ended up with the top 5. Tyler Reddick, solid run for him. Chase Elliott started from pole, but ends up 7th. Still yet to win his hometown race. Christopher Bell in 8th. Matt DiBenedetto in 9th. And Brad Keselowski rounds out the top 10. Another kind of quiet run for Brad K. Nothing spectacular, but nothing terrible either. So, point standings with 5 races remaining before the playoff. Well, Kurt Busch's win has certainly shaken things up, because now those that are above the cut line are way above the cut line. So Denny Hamlin somehow is still the point leader. Of course, Kyle Larson having his troubles the last 2 races with getting spun out and then having a speeding penalty, I think has certainly helped Hamlin maintain that points lead somehow, some way. It's still only 10 points, though, so Hamlin's really got to pick up the pace over Larson. Kyle Busch, with his runner-up finish, is third. William Byron in the fourth position, despite not getting a top 10 today. Chase Elliott in fifth. Joey Logano, Martin Truex Jr., Ryan Blaney, Kevin Harvick, and Brad Keselowski round out the top 10. Then you have Alex Bowman in 11th, Austin Dillon, Tyler Reddick, who is on the fringe of that cut line. As far as the playoff standings are concerned, he's 16th overall, but he has a 96-point lead. So he's basically hoping for nobody outside of that top 16 getting a win, because right now he's pretty much a lock. But then below that are a couple winners that have locked themselves in. Kurt Busch, of course, with the win. Of course, he had been fighting his way back from the pit of obscurity. I mean, his spring run was absolutely god-awful. I mean, he went for a long stretch without even a top 10 run. And that one team has really started to pick up the momentum a little bit here recently. And he's currently 14th in points, but with the win, he's locked in. Christopher Bell as well. He's 15th in points, but he's locked in with the win. Chris Buescher, he's 16th in the season standings. But because of Kurt Busch's win, he is now 96 points out of the playoffs. He's going to need a miracle if he's going to make it in over Tyler Reddick. He's going to need Tyler Reddick to absolutely fall apart these last 5 races. Michael McDowell, despite the fact that he's 17th, he still has that Daytona 500 win. So he's in the playoff. And then you have Matt DiBenedetto, Ross Chastain, and Bubba Wallace rounding out the top 20. So, as for my final rating for the Quaker State 400 at Atlanta, it was definitely a hell of a lot better than the race we saw back in April. It wasn't the greatest. I mean, it was still, passing was still a premium, as you could tell from the statistics. But the brother versus brother battle was super compelling. Although I don't like the team order shit. But overall, I would say this was yet another solid race. I mean, it wasn't anything. It's not anything that we're going to be really talking about years down the line. But for what it's worth, it was yet another solid race from NASCAR. And at the end, that's all that matters. So my final rating for the Quaker State 400, I'm going to give it a solid 6 on the fuel gauge. So a 6 out of 10. Certainly a lot better than April. I think the one in April I gave only a 1. So, there you go. Much, much better race this time around. I think also the shorter distance, I think, helped as well. It didn't feel like as much of a slog as the one back in April. But that is going to do it for tonight's edition of The Fuel. I am signing off and going to bed because I got to get up early tomorrow. Fucking overtime. Ugh. But you know, that's extra money, so there you go. But thank you very much for watching tonight's edition of The Fuel, and until next time, this is the Packer Man signing out. See you later.
Thank you for watching tonight's video. Be sure to like and subscribe, you rats!